Hey, Tiffany.
Hi, Dean.
Okay, Tiffany. So first, let folks know a little bit about you, and then here's our hypothetical. Okay, let's set it up. You just started a brand new client engagement. It's going to last a year. First time working with this client. First time working or even meeting any of these folks. Okay, and so after you introduce yourself, talk about what you would normally with your clients, what you normally see on day one, right? And or try to do in the first 90 days, like, problems you typically run into, assumptions people have that you have to sort of reframe, or, basically what does the first 90 days look like to a brand new fractional CMO?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. A little bit about me. I have been working in the food and beverage industry for the last 20 years, um, primarily in all things marketing. Marketing is a suitcase term. That's kind of how I refer to it. So there's lots of things that are packed underneath marketing. With that being said, my experience really is predominantly in the brand marketing space,
Mm-hmm.
product innovation, and retail merchandising. What I have experienced in my first 90 days on projects that I've been working on that were a longer term project is it varies based on where the business is and what the challenge that the business has ahead of them and why they brought me in. But with that said, there's a few things that I think have been pretty consistent. The first is there's a discovery and diagnostics phase. So that tends to be in the first 30 days ish, where
Right.
I'm spending a lot of time diving into the brand DNA. I'm doing a good audit of existing marketing efforts as well as resources that are available to the team, and I'm getting to know the team. I like to refer to it as like my marketing MRI.
Mm-hmm.
The next 30 days tends to be where the strategy crafting time takes place. So if they brought me in to address a crisis, that's where we're working on, okay, how do we overcome the crisis? Or maybe they brought me in to grow a specific aspect of their portfolio. So that's where we're focused on the growth innovation and the growth strategies. That's the time when we're laying down the strategy, we're identifying the quick wins, and we're setting our long term goals. And then the final 30 days would really be where we start to implement the plan. So that includes multiple phases of rolling out the strategy. It's ensuring that the team has, or that we have the right team in place, as well as that the team has the right resources they need in order to execute the vision.
Okay. And Warren, how about you? Let folks know a little bit about you, and for your clients, what kind of craziness has to happen in the first 90 days?
Sure. Thanks, Dean. Um, Thank you for having me. I'm Warren Sukernek. I've been a B2B tech or marketer specifically for primarily SaaS companies for the last 20 or so years, which is my experience. Today, I'm a fractional CMO, and I'm typically helping companies that are smaller, still led by their founders. They really haven't built up their operational marketing yet. And that founder is really shouldering that burden. So I've been focused on organizing and professionalizing a lot of their marketing, especially around, a topic that's near and dear to a lot of small businesses, their demand generation,
Right.
so that they're using thought leadership content to encircle their target audience. Typically, when I start, an engagement, I build out a plan that's agreed on with the CEO up front with particular milestones that often are targeted to those first 90 days. And what we do with that, there's a fair amount of audit and discovery for sure to understand just what's going on, kicking the tires, meeting the team, a bunch of the different stakeholders, as well as whomever or whatever marketing resources there are. And oftentimes with the smaller firms, they may not be on staff. It may be other fractionals or contractors. So it's getting to know them and really learning about that team. And then I think a big part of that first quarter or so is really building out or identifying some quick wins. So by delivering on quick wins that really help the company, you do a couple key things. One, demonstrate your value up front and right away. Two, you're also building credibility and trust with the team.
Right.
And lastly, hopefully, making some pretty profound, meaningful input that is sustainable and lasts throughout not just your engagement, but for the company's lifetime as well, if you will.
All right. So, well, then let's like stay in the same scenario, but be different people. So you're not the fractional CMO anymore. Now you're the CEO. Like,
Right.
you went through some kind of process to get the spend
Mm-hmm.
budgeted and allocated so you could bring in a fractional CMO for 12 months. Okay? Like, what should you, as CEO, what should you be doing in the first 90 days? Now that you've got what should you stop doing in the first 90 days that you
Sure.
were doing before, right? What should you be seeing in the first 90 days when you've got a fractional CMO on board?
That's a great question. So a lot of moving parts there. I think,
Anyone you want.
yeah. So firstly, what the CEO should really be doing is, setting up, the right goals, and KPIs, working with that fractional CMO that says, here's obviously here's the task that we need to focus on and achieve. But let's agree on the different metrics and KPIs that we can look at on a consistent, ongoing basis to make sure that we're tracking in the right direction, right?
Right.
So set that tone, that goal establishment. Set up a cadence of meetings with the CMO, typically on a weekly basis, is what I'd recommend. Could be brief check-ins, right? It could be longer, but definitely, frequent communications. Also, guide the path for them with the team, whether it's other members of the leadership team to really, build out a runway and carve out, room for them to contribute and grow, how they're going to integrate or operate together. And then also for whomever, is on that marketing team that the CMO will be then, leading, and then lastly, because, oftentimes I'll work with smaller businesses where the CEO is leading marketing or shouldering a lot of the marketing activities, is work on some sort of public transition plan, if you will, that says, okay, over this period of time, I'm going to be pulling back from the marketing activities, and the CMO will be
Right.
really focused on that.
All right. And Tiffany, if you are the CEO in this case, or
Yeah.
let me ask you a different question, but very much related. All right. Working with multiple clients over a while and years. Companies, they go through the process, they interview, they find a fractional CMO. Some number of those companies then proceed to waste that money and waste that person. How do companies waste their fractional CMO?
Ooh, okay. So that's a very interesting question, because oftentimes I'm working with food and bev businesses as well as agencies that are working with those food and beverage businesses, but I'm also working with innovation firms, or I've worked with retail buyers or tech companies that are selling to or have business with food and beverage companies. And the first thing that I would offer in response to that feedback is we need to make sure that we're speaking the same language, because I mentioned in an earlier conversation about marketing being a suitcase term, meaning there's lots of things that we have to unpack in marketing. And what a retail buyer thinks about as marketing is very different than what a PE firm or a VC firm potentially will think about as marketing. So how does an executive or a company extract the most value out of a fractional CMO? I would say there's three ways. The first is to make sure you're communicating clearly. To my first comment, ensure we're speaking the same language, we're using the same terminologies, we have the same KPIs in mind. The second would be open to change. If you brought a fractional CMO in, there's a significant opportunity for that person to provide a fresh perspective. And the third would be leverage their network. These individuals have been in their industries and they have perfected their craft for a very long time. They have a network of extensive connections that can be useful to collaborate with or to establish new partnerships or even potentially new talent opportunities.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you're still the CEO in our scenario, okay? And you're looking at the marketing team, however big or small, however many staffers there are. You're looking at that team. You're looking at, the mix between inside and outside people and agencies and contractors and so on, FTEs. You're looking at the overall headcount. You're looking at the skill set. You're looking at morale. You're looking at a bunch of stuff. As the CEO, if you look at that team today, on day one of when the fractional CMO starts, and you're trying to project out 12 months from now, when theoretically that fractional CMO might exit, right? How should that team be different or better 12 months from now than they are today on day one?
Yeah. So the team, in this instance, what we're talking about is tapping into the fractional CMO as a marketing mentor, or a transformational agent. It depends on what the team dynamics are. Maybe you are starting from scratch and you need to bring in the right folks, or maybe you have half of the right folks and you need to find the other half that might be from the outside. The things that I think are important to take into consideration when a company is already, it has a marketing team in place, and how are fractional CMOs helping to improve. It is the mentorship, to my earlier comment. It is also the opportunity for the team to really allow innovation to be brought into the organization through an objective perspective, as well as skill alignment. So I do something with several of my clients called talent calibration. And it's one thing to say that you have 15 years experience in this subject matter expertise, but I often ask folks, do you have 15 years experience in this subject matter, or do you have 1 year experience in this subject matter that you've done 15 years in a row? And so that really helps to unlock the conversation around what is existing today and where there might be gaps and where I can support the team to get where they need to be for the business.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Warren, how about you? What do you think the team will, will the team change at all? And if it does, how should it look or act differently a year from now after the fractional CMO has been around?
Yeah, great question. I think a couple things. One, is the team achieving or exceeding really the KPIs, the business objectives, that were established before the CMO came on, right? That's number one. Critical for measurement of both the fractional CMO as well as the marketing team. Second of all, how does the team perform, in really executing against the company's vision and culture? Right? Is there an improvement there? Not to say it was bad to begin with, but typically, is the team, really performing more cohesively, more collaboratively? How does communication work? Are there roadblocks, that have diminished and disappeared? And as a result, it's a much more collaborative, productive, synergistic team, because they've gotten some really strong marketing direction and leadership. So that's what I would be hoping to see at the end of a year or a period, with this fractional CMO, that the team can really pick up that ball and now is much further ahead than where they were before.
Okay, Warren, I'm gonna have you ask Tiffany a question. We don't curate guests, right? We just say everyone who shows up here, everyone's randomly paired. And so we end up with some quite interesting questions. So I'm going to have you ask Tiffany a question, but first I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. And here's the scenario, okay? Your neighbor comes to you and says, hey, Warren, I know that you do some high muckety-muck kind of marketing job thing. And my kid graduated from college recently and just started their first full-time job ever. They're the newest, most junior person in a marketing team. And that company, my kid tells me, just hired a fractional CMO. Going to start the same week. I don't really understand what you do for a living, but I do understand that that's your title. So, like, you got any advice for my kid, either as just someone who's starting out in marketing today in 2024 and could be in it for decades, or specifically even what they should think or do or avoid when it comes to this fractional CMO?
That's interesting. So first of all, explaining what the fractional CMO, does, right? Typically, a fractional CMO is a strong, experienced marketing leader
Right.
who's been around a while with, 15 to say 30 years of professional experience, responsible for a number of different things. And now they're able to function in a role for a new company, utilizing that expertise, but only for a portion of the time, right? Could be, as I've had engagements where it's been as short as, say, 5-10 hours a month, or it could be, several hours a week. Typically, it's pretty strategic, setting the course on the proper direction, but, it can be tactical as well.
So, what's your advice for like the junior
So,
person just
so
starting in
how
marketing?
that fits in with a junior person,
Yeah.
right? First of all, given the nature of the beast as a fractional,
Mm-hmm.
um, typically with junior people, you want to kind of set them on the right course and mentor them and give them direction. Sometimes, though, you can't spend a lot of time
Yeah.
with the junior people because it goes against your objectives, right? And what you're being asked to do. So I would try to set up, some guidance for this junior person in terms of, here's some things that I think you should really focus on, right? Learn as much as you can, be as helpful as you can,
Mm-hmm.
right? Network within the company to meet your peers, the seniors, not just in marketing, but then also within other functions of the company, so you get a much better rounded perspective, on what the company does and what's going on, right? And that will help you to really learn about not just the company but the industry as a whole, and strengthen your talent and capability.
All right. And what's your question for Tiffany?
My question for Tiffany is, as fractionals, we're put into, various different situations. Some may be more challenging than others, right? Some you're working individually, some, with the team. So I guess my question for you is, what was the most difficult or challenging, fractional experience you had, right? And how did you succeed in it?
Yes, I have. Oh, there's a few that immediately come to mind. But I would say one of the most challenging projects that I worked on was a project to revitalize a brand for growth. The brand had been in existence for over 50 years. It had very high household awareness, but the awareness was not positively correlated, as we like to say. So consumers didn't have a positive association with the brand. So in my experience, because I've dealt with several brand transformation, business transformation projects in the past, and it is very difficult to change a consumer's perception. Not impossible, but very difficult to change their perception once it's fixed. And so, how did we succeed? We really went back to literally day one, the basics of the business. Why was the business originally created? What was the spirit of the issue that the business wanted to address? How did they address it? And what was differentiated about that in the business inception days, but also how is it differentiated today? And so a lot of it was going back to the business's roots, the brand's roots, why it was created, and really bringing light to the issue that still 50 years later existed, and why this brand was the only brand that could address that issue.
Very cool.
Yeah, that is a good one. Okay, Tiffany. So, in a moment, you can ask Warren a question. But here's kind of my question for you. And I'm not trying to make anyone mad. But I am going to ask a direct question, okay? There are easier ways to make a living, Tiffany. Okay? Why do this job? We both know this job can be enormously frustrating.
Yes. So for me personally, I do this job because I love living on the edge. I love a challenge. Every company, to your previous question, Warren, is unique and it presents so many different challenges, and it requires me to be much more of a lioness than I ever thought I would have to, meaning I have to stay on my toes. I have to be agile. I have to be adaptive. I have to be aware of what's around me and what dangers might be surrounding me, as well as when the playing field is open and an opportunity is right in front of me, and I've got to know when to run for it. So I love that challenge. It keeps me agile, and it really just truly awakens me. So that's why I do the work.
All right. Okay. So this has been fantastic. Thank you both so much for being here. Tiffany, so like these days, who should be reaching out to you? And what's the best way to do that?
Yeah. So really, if you are a food or beverage executive or a business owner, that's really the core of the audience that I'm supporting today. But I also support innovation teams. So if there's an innovation opportunity to think through product strategy, product development, those individuals should definitely be reaching out to me. I've worked very extensively with PE firm, private equity firms, and VC firms in the past. So a lot of those opportunities really are to bring value to their businesses, potentially because they've acquired them and they're maybe on the emerging side of their skill development. So those people should definitely be tapping me. And then the last group of folks that should definitely be reaching out to me are those who might be in the SaaS, software as a service platform space, but they're specifically in pursuit of food or beverage customers or clients. So I have been very instrumental with those clients because I play the role of their prospective client, and I help them critique their pitches before they get in front of that client.
All right. And the best way is through cleverdisruption.com?
That is correct.
Okay. And Warren, who should be reaching out to you these days, and how should they do it?
Sure. So, I'm really focused on primarily B2B, SaaS-based tech companies where the founder, is ready, is typically wears a lot of hats, marketing being one of them,
right?
And they're ready to take the next leap, and really improving and accelerating their marketing capabilities, whether that's in the form of, branding, building awareness, sales channel development, partnerships, demand gen. I've worked on all of those areas with them to really enhance, and expand their capabilities. In addition to that, as fractionals, often although that might be our primary target, we get called or asked about other things. So right now, I'm as an example, I'm working with a really exciting, company in the trades, in the HVAC space, which I haven't worked on in before, but it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy, working with this company as well.
All right. And how should they get in touch with you?
Simple, just send me an email, right on the screen. warrenss@gmail.com will work, and let's talk.
All right, Tiffany and Warren, thanks so much. This has been great. I've learned a lot, which is always a nice bonus for me. One of the reasons to have a podcast is to learn a lot, and so that worked out great for me. Thanks for being here. See you again, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.